Good evening, Love Bay family, and welcome back to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. I'm your host, Felicia Fishoff, registered psychotherapist and founder of Rooted in Resilience Psychotherapy and Wellness. Tonight is Real Talk, where we come together for honest, meaningful conversations about mental health, culture, and community. And before we begin, I just want to acknowledge what a special evening this is. Tonight marks my 50th episode as host of the Mental Health Hour. And tonight marks 1 year, actually tomorrow night, since I first stepped into this role. It's truly been an honor to share this journey with all of you, and I'm so grateful you've been a part of it. Thank you for continuing to show up, engage, and make this community what it is. Now, let's dive into tonight's conversation. Tonight's episode is titled The Healing We Inherit: Black Joy, Wisdom, and Community Care. When we think about healing, we often think about what needs to be fixed. But tonight, we're asking a different question: what has already been healing us? For generations, Black communities have carried wisdom, strength, faith, storytelling, music, mentorship, and collective care through both joy and adversity. These aren't simply traditions. They are protective factors. They are sources of resilience. They are reminders that healing has never been meant to happen in isolation. So, tonight we'll explore the healing that exists within our families, our cultures, and our communities. We'll reflect on the wisdom we've inherited, the legacy we hope to leave behind, and the ways community care continues to support our mental health and well being. Before we begin, just a gentle reminder that while we discuss mental health, healing, and personal growth, this show is for educational and community support and is not a substitute for therapy, medical advice, or crisis support. And if something resonates with you tonight, we encourage you to share it with someone who may need to hear it. And as always, the chat is open. And without further ado, I want to call up the Real Talk panel, Roxanne Francis, she's amazing. She does the Therapist Lounge. She runs her own practice. She is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, someone that I have high respect for. I call her my sister. Miputus Pie. So Roxanne Francis, who's been an amazing, amazing addition to our Real Talk panel. Next is Charlene Lex, coach, registered psychotherapist who has the cutest cheeks in the world. Another sister from another mister who just is really passionate. And when I tell you that she just loves people, when she does her work, she really just slows things down. And try having her as a friend, guys. I'm telling you. She'll be like, okay, so how are you experiencing this? I'm like, sure, please. Come on, girl. All right, all right. And also we have Shanique Victoria Edwards. She is brilliant in her own right. She coaches, she consults, she talk XYZ ABCD all over town. She's been a part of Black Mental Health Canada. Girl, welcome, welcome. And she's also another amazing colleague and friend. And we also have Natasha Pennycook, another powerhouse in the field. She is a registered psychotherapist. Girl, and she has that swagger. You know, Natasha has that swagger, ladies. Like when she walks into the room, damn, you have to turn your neck because she just carries this poise and elegance with her, and she brings that into the therapy room also. All right, you see how I changed it up tonight? Okay. Well, welcome, ladies. It is episode number 50, and I'm so glad that it falls on the Real Talk episode. Oh my goodness, when I counted it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's 50. Tonight is 50. I'm so excited. And I think that we couldn't have chosen another great topic than we did tonight. We're talking about Black joy and the healing that we inherit. So, why does the Love Bay family need to be talking about this tonight?
I think a lot of times we have and experience so much trauma within the society that we live in, within our communities, that when we're able to actually have these kinds of conversations about Black joy, this right
Mm,
here it's transformative because we know how to do joy. We know how to experience joy individually, collectively, and so it's about time that we have spaces where we're actually discussing things like the Black joy experience.
beautiful.
And I would add too, joy is what essentially helped not only, us survive through things in our day-to-day lives, but also has helped our ancestors, right? They would sing and they would gather and they would eat, and all of those things were, depictions of joy being lived out. And that's the thing that was what essentially helped them get through really hard things.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, man. All I know is that I can go through a really, really hard time, but there's just even getting together with my sisters, there's a spirit of joy that comes. As you don't know, when we laugh, you can hear us down the street.
Mhm.
We turn. It's
Mhm.
infectious. It's deep. It's like this ancestral feeling that erupts on the inside. That despite of the things that we experience, there's just something deep down that helps us to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
And I really feel like that joy is a part of that, and it's inherent to who we are. It's like stitched in the fabric of who we are.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think anytime we are disconnected from joy, we're disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Woohoo! All right, go on with the thing.
I, it was interesting because I recently was doing a training on like Black and African psychology. One of the things that they said was, in terms of how do we get back to ourselves, because that's oftentimes when we're going through the throes of things, we're disconnected from elements of ourselves, and it's where can we find joy, where can we find peace, right? And how can we infuse those into the moments that we have, right? And we cannot always sometimes physically access that joy within because of the things that we might be juggling. That's where peace comes in, because it gives us the ability to kind of recenter ourselves, reconnect to ourselves, so that we can then access that joy that is innate to us.
Absolutely. So, what are the barriers to this joy that sometimes, especially as we're going into the summer, I want to make sure that we are carrying joy with us throughout the summer, because we have waited way too long for this warm weather. And while we are soaking in all of that vitamin D, I think that we want to also try different ways to, um, I don't know, like evoke this spirit of joy. So, what are some of the barriers to this joy that we talk about?
Definitely.
Miserable
Yes.
people.
Mhm.
What did you say, Charlene? I didn't catch that.
I said definitely busyness, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that so often we have so many things on the go, right? It's like when you look at your to-do list, oh my goodness. There's like you get up in the morning till the time that you hit your head hits the pillow, there's so many things that you have to do. And there's so much pressure that you're feeling for all of the things that is on your list, right?
Mhm.
So very easily you can lose your joy, right?
Mhm.
And so it's then figuring out in the midst of the busyness, how do you then attune to the joy that is within you and all around you? It's both and.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. To your point, Charlene, I think there's the idea that things that are related to joy are not productive, right?
Mm,
It's like
Ooh.
it's a waste of time.
mm,
Who has time for the kiki, the
Yes.
laughter and the hanging out, and there is this idea that we
Yes.
must always be producing. And that's a fallacy. It's leftovers from forced labor that our ancestors had to deal with, right? Like, we are only as good as what we can produce, and anything else is not allowed. And even people who had participated in the slave trade were intimidated by people gathering and laughing, people having a good time, people relaxing, people engaging with each other. Just gathering was illegal, right? And so, we have to be really intentional about going after the joy that we need, right? I go so far as to tell some of my clients to schedule it in. Schedule your fun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can be so caught up with this idea that we must be productive and there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Funnily, Roxanne, just to piggyback off what you just said, joy is resistance. Joy as resistance, right? That,
yes,
as we go into the summer, that's the mindset, right? Like, again, coming from that ancestral perspective, what if joy was the way that you finally resisted what your ancestors couldn't?
I think that there's something unifying too about that joy, because even as you were sharing, Roxanne, and you were talking about that feeling of intimidation, like I was thinking about, like, why would us exhibiting joy feel intimidating? It's because it is unifying, and I think that there's power in that.
That's exactly right. It's a power. It gives us strength, right? A happy person is a strong person. A rested person is a strong person. When you take a break from your labor and you have some fun and you connect with your people, when you go back to the labor, you are more creative, you are more focused, you have ideas, all of the things that come. You are now motivated because you were encouraged by the people that you spent your time with, right? And so people who are, particularly Black people who are rested and joyful, are resisting, and quite effectively so, resisting oppression. Right.
And I think joy needs to be guarded, right? Like I openly said before, when you asked what was one of the barriers to joy, and I said miserable people, but it's a real thing, right? Like they will latch on like leeches. And I think sometimes because the idea of joy, as Roxanne was saying, sometimes is not necessarily framed or defined in a very positive light, we don't safeguard it as much as we should. And I think if we're able to start to really kind of look at it as, yes, it's resistance, it's a strength, it's a superpower, it is the thing that I can anchor on in the midst of everything else. I think it might shift how we put boundaries around it to ensure that we're not losing it once we're able to kind of latch on how we also, take in joy or how we experience joy. Because everybody experiences it differently, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think the questions that we get to ask ourselves is, does our joy matter? Especially when we get to a certain age, right? Because it's like when you're little, your joy matters, right? You see a kid, you blow bubbles and they're happy, right? They're joyful, they're jumping around, they don't need much, right? And then we get to be a certain age and all of a sudden it's like we're not able to actually experience that same kind of like burst of joy in the same way, right? And so I think in order to reclaim it, we really do have to start having these conversations with ourselves. Does my joy matter to me? Even if it doesn't matter to everybody else around me, does my joy matter to me? Is it important to me? Because if it actually is important enough, then like it was said before, schedule it in.
Yeah.
I think the joy is important, but what I have found is that there are either people who are different from us, or maybe older adults who package your joy away and tell you you're being too idle, or you're being too loud with that laughter, or you need to go find something productive to do, right? There's almost this that is irresponsible, that kind of laughter, that kind of reckless abandon sometimes, right? That kind of, it's almost like it's you're being irresponsible with that, right? And as a result of that, a lot of people, they tuck their joy away. I see sometimes a lot of client, well, not a lot, but I see particularly young girls, they will be laughing and they cover their faces, right? Almost as though I can't have, open laughter, right? Young Black men, I see, I catch them with a little bit of laughter, and then once they catch themselves, they mean mug it away, right? Like, I'm too, I don't know, I'm too cool for that, or I'm too tough guy for that, right? It's almost like that is for children, and I'm an adult now, and I don't get to do that anymore, or that's not expected anymore. Now that I'm an adult, I need to be serious. And so I make a point of it, of, being silly and funny and loud in our home. We have dance parties and tickle fights and pillow fights, because it's important for me to, well, it's important for me to express joy. And it's important for us to share with our children what that looks like, and that it's okay. Like, I would chase my 14-year-old around the house just for fun. Like, right? Because he's already getting to that stage where, boys in high school, we don't, we're supposed to be serious, and so I challenge that, because it's really important to be able to access that. You hide that away, and the stressors of life will come at you, and it will also come at you physically, right? It's really important.
That is powerful. And ladies, we have someone calling in with us today. So yes, please feel free to put them through. Welcome. Oh, it's our first caller. I'm excited. Hello, hello. Okay, so while we wait, thank you so much for sharing that. And Roxanne, I think that there is something that is so powerful in instilling those qualities in our children, right? I love the tickle parties. I love a good tickle, man. I'm chasing my kids around the house. I'm like, come here. And I think that I also see that resistance even in my eldest as well. So it's like, oh, I'm too cool for school. I said, no, we're going to laugh today. We're going to dance. So I know if I put on some Michael Jackson, I'll get him. So, and it's important, right? It's important to foster that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about too, growing up, I think my parents did try to do their best to infuse, joyous moments. But, I also recognize the fact that for, the better part of my childhood, they were in survival mode. And I think part of also how I could, kind of take their legacy of hard work and put it into something that is, conducive for my life now, is to allow myself to have those moments of joy, because they never really got to have that because of their survival mode.
Yeah. Survival mode really does rob us of a lot of things. I have a friend of mine who, her family was a family of immigrants, and she was the only one who spoke and read English. And so from a very early age, she was translating. She was at the lawyer's office. She was at the bank. And so because of that, she didn't have time for joy in her childhood. And so she became a very serious person at a very young age, and had very little patience for play or what she would call frivolity, right? And it's now in her mid to late 40s that she's rediscovering joy. She's rediscovering play. She's going back and getting her 8-year-old self, just trying to recapture some of that, right? Because it's a miserable existence to live your life without laughter, without joy, without exploration, without discovery, without freedom.
Mhm. Mhm. I also feel like you can get to a point where you've gotten so used to kind of living without it
Mm.
that kind of getting to a place of accessing it or even knowing when you are accessing it, right? Like you can have moments when you're laughing, but you still feel disconnected from yourself, or you feel
That's
disconnected from the environment that you're in. And so, I think one of the things, perhaps maybe we could talk about too is, how do you kind of get to a place where you are able to be present in moments when perhaps maybe historically I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that our caller is online. Hello, are you there? Hello.
The controller literally destroyed itself. When you use one of the analogs on it,
Okay, so I think we're still having some connection issues. Okay, so we will try again a little bit later. Unless, can you ladies hear her? No?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just keep trying to connect our caller. Um, all right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So just moving on. Yeah, so we're moving on to Black joy, right? And the things that connect us. And again, the chat is open, guys, so feel free to jump in for all of our listeners that are tuning in tonight, right? Natasha, I like your red man.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, girl. Hello, girl. I was like, wow, see that fire red? I love it.
Listen, we're talking about joy. Wearing bright colors brings me joy.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Girl, I love a good yellow. I love a good orange. I love a good red. Oh man. If you have a good red lipstick, I tell you, it just boosts the mood.
It brings joy.
It brings joy. But these are the things, right? We have to find ways where we can embrace the joy. So like what we put on and how it elevates the who we are from the inside out. I think a lot of times, especially in a North American context, we tend to gravitate towards the black and the blues and the grays and those monotone colors, which when we reconnect with our culture and our heritage, the bright colors, those are the things that have been historically connected with joy, right? Putting on those bright colors, the costumes, all of those things, they help to just embrace that piece of us. So I try really hard to bring that color into my wardrobe because for me, that's joyous and joyful.
Absolutely. I can't lie. When you were talking about colors and our culture, I was thinking about our food. Our food is colorful.
It's colorful.
I was like, why do I always think about food every single time? But I was like, wow, a nice piece of pear, or in other parts of the globe they call it avocado, but we call it pear. Don't ask us why we call it pear. It is just called pear. Okay. Right? A nice green piece of pear, even like our sorrel and the richness of the red and the pine, the mango, everything is just so colorful and
vibrant.
vibrant.
Yes.
I could talk about food all day.
Food is one of the things
But,
that
you know, go ahead, Shanice.
I was just gonna say food is one of the things that can bring people together and
Exactly.
joy. Like you have a good meal, like for me a little bit of ackee and saltfish with fried dumpling and a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
breadfruit. I'm happy. I'm sitting there, nothing can faze me with that.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
So
A nice orange piece of pumpkin. Come on. Yeah. I tell you.
And even as we talk about our cultural foods,
Yes.
what we think about as we're talking right now, I'm sure that we're reminiscing to times that when we had those foods in childhood, right? Those are things that stay with us. Those are things that create core memories. These are traditions that are passed on. These are things that help with the joy that we experience, right? These are things that we can pass on, that are passed down from our grandparents to our parents, through us to our children, nieces, nephews, godkids that we have, children in the community, right? Because even though we might have difficult times, or we may have had difficult times, I'm sure each of us can remember a particular time in our childhood when we sat with this person or sat with this family and we had this particular dish, and we can remember the smells, we can remember the sounds, we can remember the laughter. These are things that help to strengthen us for the journey, right? These are things that remind us of community. These are things that remind us of who we are and where we're from. Despite the hardships that we might face now, we remember that we are from these people who have gone through these things, and they used to cook that food, and we used to gather around and talk and laugh about these things. And you remember that you're a part of something bigger than the person that you see in the mirror, and it's a part of your resiliency.
Yes, absolutely. And even as you were sharing about that, like I was just thinking about how grounding that is. And I know that for a lot of people in our culture, maybe meditation might not be something that they enjoy, but these are things that are grounded, that helps us to stay grounded. That when we think about these moments, we connect to a part of ourselves that sometimes we forget. So that smell, that feeling, that moment, these are things that when we're feeling even overwhelmed, like we could use these things to really help us ground ourselves in the present. It doesn't have to be a tree or walking through the forest. If you don't walk through the forest, you don't have to use that. You can think about your mother's delicious oxtail and the smell and the feel of the meat in your mouth melting off the bones. You can do that. Yeah.
I think we're all ready to go and eat something now.
Yeah, right? Oxtail, right?
Oxtail has to be the oxtail for Felicia, for sure.
I tell you, there was one session with my own therapist that I had to talk about something really difficult. And then I brought my mother's oxtail. And I said, I brought my oxtail today. She's like, all right, it's that type of session. And I did season that bowl of oxtail with my tears, but I ate the whole thing. I did every rice grain, and it was grounding for me. It was safe, right? All right.
I love it.
It's really interesting because in this part of the world, especially like within psychotherapy, we love to talk about things like your nervous system regulation and things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. What we don't actually realize is that intrinsically within Caribbean culture, within Black culture, we actually have ways of regulating that we take for granted, right? So we've been talking about food, but really what I want you to see is that there is a way that for us to actually co-regulate our nervous system with other people by eating food. When we sit around and we are laughing and we're talking about it and we're eating, we're actually co-regulating our nervous system with others, right? I'm thinking about like even memories of being little and it's mango season. And all of the mangoes, and then you have them in a pile in the center, and you and all of your people, whether it's all of your friends from school or your family member, just sitting around in a circle and you're just eating mango after mango, like literally, not with a knife that you're cutting like a,
Mm-mm.
Nah, man.
no, with your
Mm-mm.
teeth, right? All the
Yes.
mango juice dripping down your arm. The
Yes.
sun is shining on you, the birds are chirping, you're
Yes.
smelling the fresh air as it hits you. That right there is visceral. All of
Mhm.
those feelings come up, right? And that is one of the ways that we co-regulate that I think we take
Mhm.
for
For
granted
granted.
in
Yeah.
our history, in our story. And we need to start to then really recognize how important those moments really are and reclaim.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think that these are some of the reasons why when people migrate to different countries, like for example, I'm thinking about here in Canada, maybe people might migrate here, it's like they lose that part, right? And then there comes a grief with that when they can't find it because they don't know nobody. But
Mhm.
because those moments are co-regulating, it becomes a huge part of how we live and we function, how we socialize, and all of that is
Mhm.
important to our well-being. Girl, I'm coming to your house, Shar, for some mango. So you better open up your backyard and put down a nice blanket and come with the mango. We can all bring a box of mango. How about that? So it's not all on you,
Thank you. That's helpful.
So one brings some Julie mango, someone else wait, you don't like Julie?
I love it.
Oh, okay. Right? Okay, all right. Yes. Yes. The East Indian mango. You guys like East Indian mango?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. All right. What is your other favorite mango? You guys have other favorites? You're no respecter of mangoes.
Just bring them all. Bring them all.
Yes, as long as
Bring
they're
them all.
All
right
right.
from the tree. That's how I like my mango.
Oh,
Right.
Fresh.
This is about put them on the truck when they're green. No, I
Mm-mm,
want them right
mm-mm.
blank.
Right.
Right on the tree. Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
oh man.
It's
Okay.
just making me think of a vacation. Like I'm like, that's
Yes.
joy, just
That is joy.
being
Yes.
able to change of scenery, exploration, exploring something new that you've not done before. I
Yeah.
recognize right now with, I mean, gas prices are coming down, but still, there's still, a bit, rough there. But, I think challenging ourselves to kind of think outside of the box when it comes to joy. What is something that you've always wanted to do that you've never done yet? You never had the time to, you never, it just wasn't something that you thought you can access. Can you give yourself permission to access that now?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's the important piece, like giving yourself permission to access. And I know we've touched base on that in our previous conversations, but when we bring the joy factor into it, there's so many times where people around us, whether in our friend circle or clients networks, people are okay giving other people permission to access joy, but not themselves. And it's
Mhm.
starting to recognize that that's part and parcel of the issue, that people do not give themselves permission to access joy, or joy is thought of as this faraway thing meant for someone else that is beyond the grass. So even being able to schedule it, right? Schedule the joy, schedule the walks in a park, or time with the kids, running around, time to lime and share a meal with friends. Like those are things that are joyous that I think we've forgotten as a community and as a people and as a culture, being able to go back to access joy. There's a lot of clients that I work with where they say, the goal of therapy, they want to be happy. But when I ask them, what does happiness mean to you? It's like, I don't know. It's like they're waiting for someone else to give it to them, to give it them permission,
Give them
or to be in
permission.
their lap, right? So it's really
Yes.
getting back to, how do I give myself allowance and permission to access joy, and not joy based on, the facials and the spa days, but that pure joy, just like to be happy, to have fun, to do something creative. And we don't do that enough, and we do have to get back to that as a people.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's something to be said about the fact that we all have this inner child. And a lot of our inner childs are just bored right now because we're not giving them anything to do that's fun, right? And I think that it's so important to check in with that inner child on the inside and be like, what is it that you need, right? And when I ask clients this, sometimes they're like, oh, they want to color. I'm like, all right, then go get a coloring book and go color. Like, get up some paints from the dollar store. It doesn't have to be expensive, right? And oh, they want to go outside. Okay, go for a walk or go to the nearest park and swing on a swing. Just not the baby swing because you might get stuck. But I saw a video the other day and someone went into and then the firefighters had to come. So just let me be very clear: the adult swing, don't go into the baby swing. I mean that was inner child central, but but just do check in with yourself because you still have those desires to have fun, right? It might not look like going on a roller coaster, right? Because there's some things you put away when you're older, right? But
or not.
Or you don't have to.
That's not.
Roller coasters.
Maybe it's just my own heartstring. Let me talk about my own heartstring. I can't handle roller coasters anymore, especially those rickety ones where you're like, and I'm like, But if that's your thing, then do it. Like do those things. If it's going camping, go camping. But it's okay. It is okay. And that little child on the inside is still wanting to engage in these things, right? They don't have to stop, right? So, yeah.
I think one of the ways that I enjoy just watching joy is watching my son just play and go around. The kids are always at our doorstep. I'm going to charge them rent for my front porch, but they bring their own chairs. They bring their own chairs and they sit on our doorstep and they're there all night talking and playing games and their bikes are all over. And just being able to do that, right? To commune together, to come together, to just have a space where it's fun and they can just be. And I think that's one of the things too. There's so many spaces that put identity on us that we cannot be. It's so important that, again, we're scheduling that time just to be with other people who understand us, who get us, that we feel safe and that we feel like we belong and that we feel that we have a shared identity, just to be, right? And that in itself is so grounding and it's so necessary because, we're navigating this world that's hard, that's challenging, that comes with a lot. There's this time where we have to be, no, I'm not taking that. I'm just going to be today. And whatever that means for you, just being.
Yeah. There's an art to that. There's an art to finding spaces that, I always encourage my clients, where are the spaces where you literally can like kick off your shoes, put up your feet, and they're just going to be like, you just be you today, girl. Because you're fabulous just the way that you are. Even if you don't want to talk, you don't want to engage, or you do want to talk and you do want to engage. But I think there's an art to, I kind of come back to that word permission. Give yourself that permission to be, because when we talk about healing, it's about all the masks we have to wear. It's about all of the things about all of the things that we have to carry. But that moment that you actually, are able to, I'm going to let that all go. I'm going to put that off to the side. Maybe I'll have to pick it up tomorrow, recognize it. That's just the world that we're in. But for this moment, I'm going to exercise, my internal responsibility to myself and just, be.
Yeah, and I love that, Shanique, because I think that it does look different for everyone. And there's some moments where stillness is what you need. And that will bring you the most joy, right? Just that moment of quiet where you can hear your own thoughts and feel your feelings and be present in the moment. And then other times it may be louder. And that is what brings you joy. And just giving yourself the permission to just live in that moment and enjoy it.
I remember a girlfriend said to me recently, her birthday's coming up, and I was like, oh, what do you want to do for your birthday? It's a big birthday. And she's like, I just want my house to be clean and I don't want anybody to touch me. Like that's all I want for my birthday. I was like, wow, like no party. No, I just want the house to be clean and nobody to touch me.
That's hilarious.
Do you, sis? If that is
Yeah.
what joy on your day, sometimes that's all it is, right? It's nothing
Yes.
huge or spectacular. It's those little things that because of our busyness, because of the productivity pieces, all of that, we don't get to really enjoy it, right? We're in the throes of doing it all the time, but we don't get to sit back and really like take it all in.
Mm.
And I think that's the other thing to think about as well, that joy is unique to each individual, right?
Mhm.
What one person's, Charlene might love roller coasters. That's not Felicia's thing, right? Or she might not. But, there are adults who love the excitement, and there are others who just want a clean house, right? There are some
Yeah.
people who love being amongst, a big crowd of friends and people, and there are other people who just want quiet and solitude, right? So and we can't put someone down because
Mhm.
of what they find joy in. We have to allow people to have their time.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I think it's interesting. As I'm thinking about this idea of joy, I'm thinking about intersectionality, right? So the intersecting of joy with peace, but also with like safety, right?
Mhm.
Because in order for you to really experience joy, you need to actually feel a sense of safety even within yourself, even if your situation is not the greatest.
Mhm.
And so, even as I'm kind of like just kind of kicking around that idea in my mind, I'm curious for everybody here,
Mm.
how do you experience joy? What do you do?
Mm.
Oh, I love that question. It brings me back to what Roxanne, you were saying. It depends on the day. There are days when I want the clean house and I don't want anyone to touch me. And there's days when I'm like, no, we're going out, we're putting some soca on and we're dancing and so it really depends on what the mood is. And it's important
Yeah.
to be able to know self so that you know which part of yourself needs what in that day.
Yes. Sometimes joy looks like being amongst all the people, and other times joy for me is when all the plans get canceled and I get to be in my couch in my PJs watching Netflix.
Absolutely.
It can look like
Yes.
different things on different days.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
learned, joy is also, my ability to change my mind. I can be a little bit type A.
Yes.
You know, I'm very type A. Once we have a plan, we have a plan. My friends will always say they never have to call me to confirm if I'm going to be somewhere because Shanika's going to be there. We have the plan. But I've had to learn that I have to be flexible, right? Perhaps maybe it is me kind of being like, you know what? I thought I was down to do this, but I'm not. You know what? What would make me happy in this moment is literally just to sit here on my balcony with my, little Sourcey tea and just, have my moments, right? Whatever that might be for you. But I think flexibility is the word that I pair now with finding my joy, and that it could change from moment to moment throughout the day. Maybe I wanted to do that, but I can give myself permission to do something else and releasing myself from the guilt. Especially if somebody else was supposed to be involved with whatever I was supposed to do that was going to be joyous. I feel really guilty about the fact of being like, but I don't really want to anymore. But I've had to learn to be flexible and release myself from that.
So you are listening to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. Tonight on Real Talk, we're exploring the healing we inherit, Black joy, wisdom, and community care. We're reflecting on the wisdom, traditions, relationships, and acts of care that have sustained Black communities across generations, and how these strengths continue to support our mental health and well being today. And speaking of investing in the next generation, we'd like to take a moment to share an exciting opportunity from the Love Bay family. Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio is proud to present the 4th annual Voices of the Millennials Youth Summit taking place on Saturday, July 11th, 2026 at Humber Valley United Church in Etobicoke. This inspiring event brings together youth, students, professionals, entrepreneurs, educators, and community leaders for a day of networking, mentorship, meaningful conversations, opportunities for growth. As part of this year's summit, Love Bay Radio will once again be awarding $1,000 scholarships to Canadian post-secondary students in the following priority areas: medical sciences, law, justice, and community leadership, skilled trades and industry development, hospitality, tourism and service excellence, media, communications, and public relations, STEM, business, and finance. Recipients will also be considered for internship opportunities through Love Bay Radio. Applications are still open, and the deadline to apply is June 30th. So if you know somebody that is going to school, come on, spread the word. To learn more or apply, please go to Love Bay Radio Events 2026 at gmail.com and send us off an email, or call us at 437-778-3299. Again, that's love, not LOVE, but LUVBAY events 2026 at gmail.com. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Download the Love Bay Radio app from the Apple App Store or Google Play, and visit lovebayradio.live. Again, that's LUV, bayradio.live, to support the station with your donation. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful conversations to our community. And if you'd like to join tonight's discussion, again, please call us at 437-778-3299. We'd love to hear from you, because when we invest in our youth, we invest in our future. Now, let's get back to our conversation tonight. Amazing. Oh, I think we have something in the chat. Let me take a look. All right. Oh, thank you, Petronella. Petronella says, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary on the Mental Health Hour. Oh, how time flies. Girl, I tell you, the passion you bring each week and meaningful conversations continuing to change lives each week. Thank you so much, Petronella. And honestly, I couldn't do it without this community. Honestly, we do this together. And it has been such a joy over the past year being host of Love Bay. It's been fun. I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun. And the Love Bay family is a lot of fun. I'm telling you. So they can't get rid of me in a long time. I'll be an old lady, okay? All right. Oh my goodness. Amazing. Amazing. You know, I was thinking about what we were talking about prior to our metro, right? And we were talking about just being authentic in the way that we find joy, and like giving ourselves the permission to be okay with like what it feels like in the moment. And then I was just thinking about my favorite word in the whole wide world, which is boundaries, right? And being able to guard that. And because I think sometimes a lot of us, even though we know that we need to, like, we want to experience joy in a particular way, sometimes we feel bad expressing that to other people and telling them that that's maybe what will bring them joy in the moment is not what we need in the moment. So how do we actually set those safeguards around our joy and be able to give ourselves the permission to be okay with saying those things, expressing those things, and I guess safeguarding it for that inner child?
I thought you were going to say your favorite word was oxtail, but
Oh, that is my second favorite word in the whole wide world. Boundaries, oxtail, very good.
but But one of the things that I do oftentimes, share with my clients is, sometimes the anxiety of having these conversations because we just don't know what to say. And I think sometimes having some scripts, right? Well, what are some things that you can kind of pull out in those moments that you've already considered, right? And those things those scripts sometimes can be the thing that helps you put in those boundaries, or at least start to have those conversations. And so, maybe sometimes it's, one of the things I had to learn is because it was hard for me to say no was, let me get back to you. That became my, go-to script about that. Let me get back to you. Let me think about it. And then that was able to progress to, no, I'm not really interested, because I was able to kind of wean myself off of the guilt that would come from just saying no outrightly and being perceived as if, I'm being selfish or whatever would come to my mind in those moments. But yeah, that's something that I sometimes encourage is, to be able to start to have that conversation with boundaries is having some scripts that you've developed already in advance.
Let me pray about it.
Got you.
Yeah.
That's for cheese for no, I'm not going to do it.
Your parents used to say that. I'm gonna pray on it, and I'll let you know. You knew.
Oh boy.
I think sometimes it's anxiety, right? You're feeling anxious because the people pleaser part of you really
100%.
wants things to just be smooth with other people. And so the idea that you would then say no, right? That is then activating that part of you, right? That part that just kind of feels like, oh, but I don't want to be on the outs with that person. I don't want them to be upset at me, right? But the truth of the matter is that if they're upset at you because you could not do something, that says a lot more about them than does about you, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to at some point weigh it to see what's more important to you, right? Is it more important to you to then just kind of go along and do everything else that everybody else wants you to do all the time, just so that you actually keep the peace with them, but you're not feeling that internal peace? Or is it time to then start really weighing it to say, okay, what do I feel like I can do? What do I have capacity for? Yes, I have capacity for this, but not for that. So the more that you actually start living a little bit more authentically and stop abandoning yourself, the better it's going to be over time. Maybe the person will be upset, but you know what? They might also start respecting you a little bit more because they're actually then going to respect your time when you can show up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're going to be upset because they're not getting what they want. I think we have to remember that too, right? That intrinsically people want to get what they want when they want it. So people are going to be upset to your own boundaries or to our own boundaries because they're not getting what they want. So it's about figuring out that, okay, what do I need in this moment? How do I not internalize or hold in or pull in the hurt and pain that's coming from them, but really being able to figure out okay, do I actually want to do this? Is this actually going to benefit me? And if not, then yeah, that's a no. It could be, I'll pray on it. I'll wait till God tells me yes, but we'll see. All of those different things. But I think having scripts are a great idea. I use that with clients a lot who tend to struggle. So I'll have those 5 things and okay, these are the only 5 things you're going to say, and just recycle them until it becomes that second nature, right? Because it does take time to practice. And it's back to the allowance, that permission to give yourself that permission to show up, to be able to access the joy and be in the joy. It's a lot of no one else is going to do it for you.
Absolutely. And how do we tap into the wisdom? Because I know we talked about the joy tonight, but what about the wisdom and the community care? What can that look like?
We carry a lot of inner wisdom that we don't give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
Our ancestors have passed down all kinds of family wisdom, community wisdom that we sometimes think are old wives' tales. North America would have you believe that it's not civilized, because it's not evidence-based, because there are no clinical trials. And I'm not knocking evidence, I'm not knocking clinical trial, but there's a lot of Charlene, you okay?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm like, yes, tell them.
But there's actually a lot of there's some work being done now that will credit some of the knowledge that our forefathers had. These ways of knowing, I like to call it,
And being.
are now being tested with science.
Mhm.
And researchers are beginning to say, wow, there is actually merit. And I'm just like, really? Right? You know, Caribbean ancestral knowledge, African ancestral knowledge, indigenous ancestral knowledge that have kept our people going for decades and decades and decades. And, you know, now it's being whitewashed and presented as hibiscus drinks instead of, you know, sorrel that we drink at Christmas time. You know what I mean? Right?
Don't even get me started. I said hibiscus. How about that? Oh, it's comfort. I said, oh, sorrel.
Sorrel. Exactly. Right? Things that our, you know, religious leaders might have done in the past, like the church mothers who've spent, when they're going through difficult seasons, they will be fasting and praying. And now, oh, intermittent fasting is the way to go, right? There's all kinds of things that are being recycled and rebranded and presented to us as new and improved, when it's really just our own ancestral wisdom that's being repackaged. And so it's really important that we don't throw away where we're from, and you know what we've been taught, you know, how to soothe a sleeping child, a crying child. You know, there's a story that my mother tells all the time. I had a really bad cough as a baby, really bad. And she had a dream that her grandmother, her maternal grandmother, came to her in the middle of the night in a dream and said, don't let that child die from that cough. There's a whole, you know, bush of whatever it is back there that's behind the house. Go boil some, strain it, and give it to her. And she did that. And after 2 days, my cough was gone, just gone. Right. And so it's really important that we hold on to some of these things. Yes, we want to weigh them against what makes sense. Right. And again, this is not medical advice. But we really need to be mindful of some of these things that do have merit. And if we're not careful, the whole idea of progression will have us throwing that all out.
Absolutely.
And there's space for both.
Yes.
Right? There's space for both. And I think that's the piece, especially in North American context. We live in these silos. It's good, bad, happy, sad, black, white, right? Like there makes no space for both. So being able to use that ancestral wisdom, use what the grandparents and our ancestors have brought in, use the different plants and the herbs and all of these things that have medicinal elements for healing and for joy, along with some of the other pieces, right? Like there's space for both. And I think that's the important thing. There are so many people that I speak with on a daily basis who are just stuck in the one way. It's really about time that, you know, we open up that intersectionality and look like there are space for both, because we are multifaceted people. So it makes sense to go through multifaceted ways of healing and knowing and being, to access that joy and that wisdom and that community care.
Absolutely. And I think that there also needs to be a connection between the different generations, because I feel that sometimes we can get disconnected from the generations that come before, right? Like, and my mom used to say, Felicia, drink tea, it will bust the gas. And I'd be like, Mom, Mom. And now, you know, I now I'm going to my mom like, Mom, what should I do for this? And what, because I know that she has knowledge that has
Mhm.
been passed down to her, and
Mhm.
I want to be able to pass that legacy down to my kids. And I think that there's something to be honored in even the previous generations as well, and gleaning that wisdom as ancestral wisdom, so that we
Yeah.
don't lose it for
Yeah.
these like fads that are popping up and thinking that, but it was like, you're right, it has been recycled back to us. And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, my mom was right. Tea does bust the gas. I'm telling you, it does. It really, really does.
Oh, that's hilarious.
When you have a stomach ache, what do you reach for? A cup of tea,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You reach for the.
Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Black Health Unfiltered. My name is Dr. Keem Stewart, here with the wonderful.
Rachel Sinclair.
There you go. So, welcome to another episode at the program where real conversations meet real solutions. Broadcasting live on Love Bay Radio, we dive deep into the stories, struggles, brilliance, and resilience that defines Black health across the diaspora. This is a space where nothing is off limits, from mental wellness to medical myths, from community healing to the systems that impact our bodies and our futures. Guided by experts' insights, lived experiences, and unfiltered truth, we are here because Black health deserves clarity, power, and a platform. So let us elevate this conversation and reclaim our narrative one episode at a time. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. It's been really odd weather over here in Ontario. We've had up and down all the way around. We had extremely hot days with surprise thunderstorms. and
Yeah,
heavy
those
rain.
were a huge surprise.
Yeah, a lot of people without power for a little bit. A
Hmm
little bit of flash flooding. Canada Day came. Everyone was expecting fireworks, and all of a sudden, clouds started rolling in, looking like a doomsday parade. But we're here. It's sunny today. It's a little bit cooler, and I guess we're in the full swing of summer. So for all those up there in your swing of summer, remember to hydrate. Use your sunblock. It's very
Mhm.
important, right? The same. I keep telling people the same sun that our ancestors dealt with is not the same sun that we're dealing with today.
Mm-mm.
You can get skin cancer. So please use your sunblock.
SPF.
Use your SPF over 50 if you can,
Hmm
right? And make sure you protect yourself. So, Richard, we have a packed show today, and we're speaking about uterine health, and because as it is uterine fibroid month, right? We really want to take to expand over a 4-part series of talking about fibroids, talking about all the different complications and its manifestations, endometriosis, so on and so forth, hormone imbalance, and we'll be talking about these things over the next 4 weeks.
hmm
Really taking a deep dive to explain and take time to give knowledge, right, on what persons may be dealing with, what persons may have around them that they may not understand, and the possibility of these things actually developing if not done, or you don't take the preventive measures as you can.
hmm
In the Black community, we all know someone that unfortunately suffers from fibroids, and it's really not a nice complication to have to live through, especially with the hormone imbalance and the pain that it can bring when it comes to menstrual cycles,
Right.
complications that it brings to when it comes to fertility. It really is so much, and it's never the same manifestation, or it doesn't present itself equally every single time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we could start with a little bit of statistics today, 4 to 5 Black women will develop a uterine fibroid, or will develop uterine fibroids by the age of 50, and often a decade earlier than their other counterparts, other racial groups. And
Mhm.
often symptoms severe enough to disrupt work, relationships, and mental health. And yet, fibroids are still treated like a footnote, unfortunately. Just heavy periods, just cramps, something to push through instead of something to treat. So, this July, for Uterine Fibroid Awareness Month, Black Health Unfiltered, as I said, we're going to have this 4-part series to change that and have that conversation. Let's break that silence, right? in part one today, we're going to be laying the foundation on what fibroids actually are, what they do to the body and the mind, and why this is a Black health equity issue as much as it is a gynecological one.
Mhm.
No guests for this episode today, so it just won't be us, Rachel and myself, breaking it down the way we would wish someone had broken it down for our mothers, our sisters, our partners, and ourselves. So if you've ever been told your pain was normal, this one is for you. Right? Remember today, guys, if you want to join in on the chat on YouTube, you can, or you can call in 437-778-3299 or WhatsApp or local. That we can also have a conversation through there. So I think first off, we're going to hit off of what fibroids actually are. And Rachel, ask for your, this is an opportunity. I don't really get to do this often. But in your opinion, what are fibroids?
Oh gosh. I think let me get technical. Let me start technical and then let me go in terms of what my own personal interpretation is. But if you were to open up a medical textbook or talk to your doctor about this, they're more than likely going to tell you that they're considered to be non-cancerous growths, and they're made of smooth muscle and also some fibrous connective tissue. And so the two things come together and they form in and around the uterine wall. So it's the most common type of pelvic tumor that people with uterus would have, but the word tumor doesn't often get used simply because it's so alarming. But the majority of them are actually considered to be benign and never really become cancerous, but they still have a significant impact on the lives of women everywhere. And part of that issue and part of the lack of understanding and the lack of knowledge that's often not shared amongst women is because of the fact that there is not a lot of them turning out to be cancerous.
Yeah, and that's very true. So fibroids, to give what you hit the nail on the head, uterine fibroids, specifically also called myomas or leiomyomas, are non-cancerous growth made of smooth muscle and fibrous connective tissue that develop in, on, or around the uterine wall. They're the most common pelvic tumor in people with a uterus or women. And despite the word tumor sounding so alarming, the overwhelming majority are entirely benign, and thankfully they never become cancerous. So they do have a little idea. So when we talk about the size and the range of it, fibroids can be as small as a seed, right? And we could also differ between fibroid and a cyst, fibroid and a cyst. But let's just keep on the idea of speaking about fibroids today. So they can be as small as a seed, undetectable without imaging, or grow to the size of a grapefruit or melon. So imagine like you got something as small as this, and then you could have something that big, large enough to be visibly distend the abdomen and be mistaken for pregnancy. In rare extreme cases, a single fibroid or cluster can weigh several pounds. So when we look at number as well, some people develop single solitary fibroids. Others develop dozens simultaneously of varying sizes at different stages of growth. It's common for new fibers to develop even after others have been treated or removed. So for those that may have gotten them removed and then they come back like, oh, we don't understand, it's not uncommon for them to come back. So it is very important taking the stages of doing what you can, balancing hormones, weight, whatever. And we're going to get into that as we can as a series. But just understanding that having them removed doesn't necessarily, the butt doesn't stop there. The work still has to continue to maintain that they don't come back. And then we're looking at location, which this matters enormously, right? Fibers are classified by where they sit relative to the uterine wall, and location is often a bigger predictor of symptom severity than size. So though you may have a small fibroid, as small as a seed, its location and where it sits really does determine how severe it would be than it being different to someone who may have a fibroid as big as a grapefruit, right? So there's submucosal fibroids, which grow just under the lining of the uterine cavity and protrude inward. Even small submucosal fibroids tend to cause the heaviest bleeding and the most fertility disruption because they distort the uterine lining directly. Intramural fibroids grow within the muscular wall of the uterus itself. These are the most common type and can cause the uterus to feel enlarged or bulky. And subserosal fibroids grow on the outer surface of the uterus, sometimes on a stalk, which could be pedunculated. All right, pedunculated. These are less likely to affect bleeding, but can press on the bladder, bowel, or other pelvic structures, causing pressure symptoms. And then lastly, we're going to look at prevalence. It's estimated that most people with a uterus will develop at least one fibroid in their lifetime. Many are asymptomatic and discovered incidentally during an unrelated ultrasound, pelvic exam, or during pregnancy imaging, meaning a huge portion of the population is walking around with fibroids they don't know about, while others are living with debilitating, undiagnosed symptoms from the exact same condition.
Which is crazy to think about, right? Like symptoms can impact are impacting women so differently, and a lot of them are walking around with fibroids that are causing them pain, and they're changing the way that they're moving about in the world and affecting their life, and they don't even know that that's the cause. And unless they're getting some type of screening or some type of test and it just so happens to pop up, that's how a lot of women are finding out.
Yeah, and when you sit down and think about it, like, what can you really do? Can you constantly go and say, hey, I need imaging all the time to make sure I don't have fibroids? It's not something that you can readily just say, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, to stay on top of it. And unfortunately, you don't know until it's too late. But then that's why it's so important to make sure you get your checks every year. Right?
Yeah.
If you're a gynecologist, make sure you do your gynecological checkup. Make sure that you go in if you're going to have and your pap smears every 2-3 years, right? Make sure you do all of those necessary steps to stay on top of your, just not only your physical health, body wise, but your vaginal and reproductive health. And it's easier said than done, because not
Yes.
everyone has a gynecologist, not everyone has a family doctor. But these are some of the things when you do have the opportunities that you need to keep in consideration, right? Or take into consideration. So I guess after we speak about all those things then, and taking those things into consideration, we have to understand first, before we even go and ask these questions at a consult, what actually causes fibroids, right? And a lot of literature out there. Let's say a lot of
Yes.
different things.
Yeah.
We could talk about when it comes to Black women specifically. I remember years ago that they said fibroids were more prevalent in Black women who straighten or perm their hair, right? Permanently, and because of the hormonal disruptors that are found in or the chemicals that are found to help straighten the hair. That's why we constantly say that trying to live to a Eurocentric beauty standard should never be the case for you, because it actually does more harm than it does.
It's very dangerous, and a lot more dangerous than people think it is.
Exactly. But and then it's also hard to look at a woman and tell her, like, hey, wear your hair natural because it's best. But then when you understand the amount of hair care, the money and the products that you gotta put in, so the moisture is there and all that. And
18 moisturizers, yep.
Different moisturizers. I've walked in the beauty display store maybe twice this week, and everyone walking in is like, this is overwhelming, because how do you know which is what? So it's a catch-22 when you look at it, but then you have to wager what do you want more. But those are just some of the things that are said, like, loosely, right? But if you really dive deep into them, like, the research is, you have to realize the research base that exists is still genuinely evolving, right? And overstating certainty will undercut the credibility of what it is. So for those listening to what can cause, this is still developing research. Nothing has been set in stone, but these can be considerable factors that do affect persons with the uterus to be able to in developing or being stricken with fibroids, right? So we're looking at hormonal drivers. Straight off the bat, we have estrogen and progesterone.
Mhm.
are understood to fuel fibroid growth. Fibroids typically grow during the reproductive years when these hormones are highest. They tend to grow faster during pregnancy and typically shrink after menopause when hormone levels drop. This is also why hormonal treatments are a common first line management approach. We
Mhm.
have genetic and familial risks. Having a mother or sister with fibroids meaningfully increases a person's own risk, suggesting a hereditary component that researchers are still working to fully map at a genetic level.
Mhm.
Age. Risk rises steadily through the reproductive years, typically peaking in the late 30s through 40s, though fibroids can appear earlier. Over other contributing factors sometimes discussed in basis of research. So we're looking at body weight, we're looking at vitamin D levels, and that is
Mhm.
actually very recent. Um, there are findings that persons who use or supplemented by vitamin D has seen significant reduction in fibroids. And I've said it many times on this podcast. You need a saturation of 30 to 40 minutes every day in the sun for us Black people to get therapeutic levels of vitamin D developed in our body.
And for those of us who live in cold countries like Canada, you know you're not getting that most of the year.
Let me start it. Supplement will go outside for 30 because the sun hot.
Yeah.
The sun is hot. It's hot outside, so people are in the shade.
Mhm.
But and it's not like you just put your hand outside and it's like 30 to 40 minutes and you're good. No, you have to literally be outside, fully immersed in the sun for 30 to 40 minutes
Yeah.
to get your vitamin D therapeutic levels. There are times that if you get up extra early in the morning before it gets too hot, between 6 to 8 a.m.,
Mhm.
right? Or if you go late evenings, right, where the sun is going, but it's just enough. So between 4 to 6, depending on where you're situated. Let's speak about the Caribbean more, depending if you're situated a little bit later in
Mhm.
American African countries in the summer months. But majority of us
Mhm.
in the Black community, we're not doing that. Right? You're not finding yourself outside. So if you are, perfect. But if you aren't, then you need
To supplement with some
to
vitamin
supplement
D.
your vitamin D. And vitamin D should be supplemented with a fatty substance. So when I say fatty substance, I'm talking about omega-3 or with food. So when you're taking your vitamin D, please take it with food or with fatty oil substance. It could be omega-3, it could be olive oil, it could be avocado oil, because vitamin D is fat soluble and you need it to be for it to be absorbed in the intestine. It needs to have a fatty substance to go with it to make it soluble enough for absorption. All right, that's just a small tangent on the side, but they've seen that vitamin D levels, specifically low vitamin D levels, have contributed to development and growth of fibroids
Mhm.
and diet as well. And we've spoken
Yes.
about diet 100%. We talked about fiber, increase fiber up to 25 grams for women. It's so important because you excrete excess estrogen into the stomach for it to be, not stomach, sorry, into the intestine for it to be taken away. That's taken away, absorbed and taken away by fiber. If you don't have significant amount of fiber within your intestine at the time, the body will reabsorb it. And with that reabsorption, that's where you get a hormonal imbalance. This is also very new literature that and findings that persons are seeing.
Mhm.
So researchers are discovering. So is in its beginning stages, we're seeing that if you increase your fiber, you can help yourself bring down your hormonal imbalance issues, especially when it comes to estrogen levels.
Mhm.
So that's something else as well to take into consideration when we think about diet. You're talking about antioxidants, you're thinking about the level of fiber, you're thinking about hydration as well, making sure you're getting your electrolytes, your minerals. And I know it sounds like a lot of work, but if you catch a groove, right, where
Yeah.
you find where you can supplement on what you can get in whole foods, then it becomes a lot easier because life becomes easier due to you being able to reach equilibrium,
Mhm.
right? Or a sense of
Yeah.
homeostasis in the
And
body.
100%. It's just a bit of an accessibility issue in terms of being able to afford those supplements and to be able to afford those nutritious whole foods, not just for yourself, but for, your mother, your sister, your auntie, whoever else you may be providing for too, right?
Mm-hmm. It's an investment, and maybe I'm not going to say that I speak from a place of privilege in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, because I rather sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
what I can to make sure I can still get those type of supplements in. But then I guess I do. I'm speaking because I'm not. A lot of a lot of circumstances I'm not living where other people live in. So like, if it is a possibility, you have a village and you can, please, like,
Help your
something
villagers.
nothing. Something is better than nothing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not asking you to go and buy the whole house store. I'm asking you to speak with your family physician,
Mm-hmm.
speak to someone, and see what actually you can do, and then you can start there. So every small step towards the right direction carries you where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't have to sprint there. Sometimes it just takes a shuffle, and the shuffle becomes a glide, and the glide becomes a walk, and the walk becomes a run, and the run becomes a sprint, and now you're at the end. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these have been studied as potential contributing or protective factors, though none of these are considered definitive causes on their own. Just solely, as I said, a lot of this research is pretty new. So
Mm-hmm.
that, and then we're looking at something that's really big, the equity gap in research itself. It's worth naming directly that the scientific understanding of why Black women are so disproportionately affected, not just hormonally, but potentially at a genetic or environmental level, is still catching up to the scale of the disparity.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a minor caveat. It reflects a broader pattern of underinvestment in research specific
Yeah.
to Black women's health outcomes. So this is also one thing you have to consider, that a lot of research doesn't reflect us, our group, or the women within Black community. So a lot of the information you may be also gathering online, you have to be very careful what you gather, because a lot of it is being told from a gaze that does not carry your shade of color.
100%. And taking that into consideration for not just, exploring what's causing fibroids, but also what the physical effects are and the symptoms that people are going to be presenting with. Because as you start to consider, you know, other demographics, speaking specifically for Black women, you start to consider them more, that list may change. But in terms of just sharing that information for you guys, we want to kind of go through some of the major ones to be aware of, to not only for yourself, but for, the other women in your family, and also be able to take this information back to your physicians, your primary care practitioners, to be able to have a conversation if you feel like some of these things are resonating with you. So one of those big things when we're thinking about symptoms and physical effects is heavy, prolonged periods, which is also known as menorrhagia. So those are periods that last beyond 7 days, requiring you to change your tampon, change your pad more often than what is considered to be average. So talking about every hour or two, you may be passing clots that are significantly large. That's the most disruptive, commonplace symptom when people are thinking of fibroids and how it impacts their bodies. And then the next one would be talking about anemia, so specifically around that significant iron deficiency. So all of that blood loss over months and years will deplete your iron stores, and that leads to things like fatigue, dizziness, shortness of breath, constantly feeling cold in your hands and your feet. So if you're like rubbing your hands together, rubbing your feet together, finding that, when you're lying down in bed at night, all of you is comfortable, but your feet are freezing and your hands are freezing, that's a sign that your iron levels are very low. And then also adding on to that difficulty with concentrating. So a lot of those symptoms often get misattributed to stress, lifestyle, or just constantly being tired, rather than being connected back to that blood loss, which would be connected back to having fibroids. So you see how very quickly, when you shift your perspective a little bit, thinking of these symptoms and opening your mind to consider the possibility of having something like fibroids, how it changes the perspective or changes the landscape of what you're looking at a lot differently, because those symptoms that I just mentioned a lot of people would just attribute them to, oh, I'm just always tired, or oh, I just need to, eat this or eat that, when there's a bigger issue at play that they may not be aware of. And then another one to consider as well is significant pelvic pain and pressure. So when you're feeling a consistent heaviness or ache in your lower abdomen or in your pelvis, it's almost described as like a dull, constant pressure rather than a sharp pain. And then lower back pain is another one. So those larger fibroids that radiate into the lower back that we talked about before, they can mimic just muscular pain, and that often gets misdiagnosed as just chronic low back pain when it's a symptom of a broader issue, right? There's also abdominal bloating and distension. So with those larger fibroids, not only can you have a lot of pain in your lower back, but the abdomen can also become bigger and like protrude more, which leads to people getting asked if they're pregnant, when really it's the fibroid that has just grown to a significant size and is now pressing up against other structures in your abdomen and making it larger.
So this
Right.
is one time, not to cut you there, Rachel, that it's very important that you just don't assume someone is pregnant.
Yeah.
Just don't say, hey, when you're expecting, because it's very difficult when someone may have
Mhm.
a fibroid and you're asking them if they're pregnant,
Mhm.
and that person could also be suffering from fertility issues, and now you're saying that they look pregnant, and now they know in back in their head that they're having difficulties getting pregnant. I know you're like, oh, like
Mhm.
be very,
Be
very
mindful. Be
mindful
mindful.
about how
Yeah.
you approach persons. I mean, just wait till someone tell you. If
Mhm.
they're showing and it comes and you notice, they're gonna say they're happy to be pregnant, but like in those times, especially
Mhm.
our community, we tend to say, "Oh, you getting so big, or you poor thing, you ain't fat, you must be thinking, well, are you pregnant?" No, stop it.
No. Stop.
Don't
Yes.
do it. Like, be
Absolutely.
mindful of that, right?
Mhm.
Especially, I just wanted to plug that in there because I've heard it many times where a person say, "You don't mind your business," right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
just
your disclaimer highlights my anecdote that I was going to share, which is that I had somebody who is living with fibroids and who does have that specific physical impact with the larger abdomen, that it's been a struggle of theirs, not because not only are they struggling to get pregnant, but they also are appearing pregnant. And so people keep congratulating them and asking them about when they're due and things like that. But it's such an already sensitive topic for her, so to have to um, dismantle those stories and those assumptions on top of dealing with what she's already dealing with. She talks about not wanting to go outside, not wanting to go to the grocery store, like just wanting to be at home because she doesn't want to be seen and have to deal with those difficult questions. So yeah, that mindfulness piece is really important, especially for something as sensitive as this. And in addition to all of those physical impacts, so we're talking about, you also have urinary and bowel symptoms. So pressure on the rectum or the bowel, and then pressing on the bladder. So with the pressing on the bladder, you might find that you're going to the bathroom a lot more, constantly feeling like you have to go, or having a hard time fully emptying your bladder. So if you find that you're sitting on the toilet and you've gone, and then a couple of minutes pass, and then you feel like you have to go again, that is a sign to kind of be mindful of, that maybe you need to have a conversation with your doctor. And similarly, having those fibers pressing on the rectum or the bowel will cause constipation, or that feeling of fullness and trying to go to the bathroom, but you're just not able to. Mm-hmm.
And then we have, just to finish it up, we have pain during intercourse, right? And depending on the fiber location, sexual activity can become painful, which
Mm-hmm.
often is unspoken due to stigma. Not only stigma, but like due to where persons may find their levels of pleasure and what they think is pleasure. It's good to keep into consideration that not all pain is pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you are feeling uncomfortable, it is not, and I'm going to be very frank, it's not nothing normally cases. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very important at that point in time to like, hey, stop. This does not feel correct. Know your body. This does not feel correct. I need to go and get this checked out. And that's very important to consider as well. And we have our fertility complications. I know we touched on that, right? So submucosal fibroids in particular can interfere with embryo implantation or
Mm-hmm.
increase miscarriage risk by distorting the uterine cavity. So those that can happen as well. So very important, as I said, if you do have fibroids, or making sure that you can get those checkups with your gynecologist or your family doctor yearly. Really good, especially if you have a familial history
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to this. And then we have pregnancy complication. So fibroids are associated with an increased risk of preterm labor, abnormal fetal positions such as the breech position or breech presentation, and higher likelihood of needing a C-section delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So these things as well happen. So when when you're looking to get pregnant, and like if you actually have the time to say, okay, I'm planning for pregnancy this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because not all pregnancies happen planned when we have these situations that they may not
Yeah.
happen planned,
Mm-hmm.
right? But those in that opportunity to say, okay, we're looking at SPEC, please take the time to go through the genetic testing. Please take the time to go through um, having a conversation with your family doctor and doing all the necessary tests to make sure that your body is aligned and ready for
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy. So that does take a high level of preparation before the actual act, right? And I think we are living in a world where things have become so complicated. It's not as simple as it used to be back in the day. We were saying, well, my mom, my grandmother, whatever the case is, it was just boom, yeah, we was ready to become a kid. But no, we live in a world that we should take the necessary steps to make sure that we're ready for what comes with pregnancy, especially for women, as with all the complications that actually can occur,
Yeah,
right? Knowing that we can actually see it before it happens to somewhat a higher degree than it was 20, 30 years ago.
absolutely.
Mhm. So and I know that was a big long list of physical effects, but I don't think they're too far off of where a lot of people would have had experience. But I
Yeah.
also like to remind our listeners that they listen to Black Health Unfiltered on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Please subscribe, like, share, download our apps from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Visit our website and tap the donate button to make a contribution to as this helps us continue serving you, our community. And if you'd like to be part of today's conversation, please reach out to us at 437-778-3299 or join us on the chat on YouTube as we are streaming live at the current moment. So I think now we were talking about the silence. And if you're going to really talk about the silence around what fibroids can happen,
Mm-hmm.
I think, or what fibroids do to us, we need to talk about the effects that people don't talk about enough, right? And I think that we should take a little bit of time on this part as well. We're looking at the mental and emotional load, first off and foremost, when we really speak about fibroids, right? Constantly having to plan life around an unpredictable, heavy period. This is where you can't go out because you're not too sure if you may bleed through your pad, or you bleed through your tampon or your diva cup, whatever case you may use,
Mhm.
and soil yourself, right? And having to plan like, okay, do I double up, triple up, so I can be able to go and sit down and have dinner with my friends, right?
Mhm.
Having to choose clothing carefully. Okay, I can't wear white. If I wear white today, it's a bad day. I got to use something. If I do bleed through at least one show, right? Mapping out bathroom locations in advance, canceling social plans because the pain is too much, right?
Mhm.
Or it's just too heavy for you to go, and you can't focus to do anything. Avoiding light colored clothing and carrying a low grade anxiety but bleeding through in public. Constant. That is an emotional load. So that really does affect your social life. And we're social beings. So
Mhm.
you may choose to stay in rather than go out. The isolation of normalized suffering is another thing that we have to take into consideration as well. Many people assume debilitating pain and bleeding is simply what a period is supposed to be. I'm going to say something that a lot of people, I've said it before, and first, the last person I told it off, they said, "Don't piss me off." But I said it, right? But the healthiest form of you having your menstrual cycle shouldn't last more than 3 days. It should be 3 days for your cycle.
3 days.
3 days. Your cycle, technically, if in all, I know most give to 5, but like the brunt of the cycle itself should be 3 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've come to a point where it's like, okay, it's all right if you have it for 5, if you have it for 7, if you have it 8, 9. Oh, does my period last a bit long? But I'm spotting here. We've normalized it so much, right? We've stepped away from what it is because there's so many things that have happened, so many disparities, so many complications that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? With the introduction of all these different types of contraceptives and hormonal treatments and
Yeah. Well, I was just about to say, I think the introduction of those contraceptives, especially things like the IUD, the hormonal ones, right? They adjust your barometer for what is now considered to be your normal. So
exactly.
if we have a bunch of women that are getting these IUDs inserted, then all of their normals will shift, and then collectively we may be looking at a new normal. So somebody who does have a shorter period cycle that is only for the brunt of it, as you say, 3 to even 4 days. Whereas now all of those women may be looking at something that's more like 11 to 12, like longer, with all the when you're taking into consideration all of the spotting.
Mhm.
That's now a new normal
Yeah,
for them.
and that's what it is. And when you really look at it, and as I said, my friend told me don't piss them off. I'm like, but it's so that's textbook. That's what it's supposed to be. And if you look, a lot of women do have periods for 3 days, and most women call them God's chosen favorites, right? But there's so much, and there's a lot of things when it comes to stretching the pelvic floor, doing your pelvic floor exercises, make sure you're getting electrolytes, staying on top of your iron levels, and doing our strength and work like strength building exercises. They actually lower the pain that occurs during the cramping and so on and so forth. But that's for another episode. I would not go into that. We're focusing on fibroids. But if you really think about it, I'm just setting a foundation here that the pain that being as debilitating as it is and not bleeding is simply what appears is supposed to be. This is actually not what it is. All right. And this happens because people weren't told otherwise, whether it be by family, peers, or even providers. This normalization delays people from ever seeking help in the first place. So if you realize that is the oh my, I can't do anything for the day, I'm staying on, like that is not what is supposed to be. You're not supposed to have to live through that. There is a space where it isn't as debilitating as that. And many may not reach it because it takes a lot of work to get there, right? But understanding that it is there, knowing that when these levels of pain are so high that you just can't do anything, that should just like turn the light on and say, okay, you know what? I need to go and seek help. I need to talk about this. I need to ask a question, because it could be a little bit more than just regular period pain, right? But it's really not supposed to be that for women. And this is not me. Let me also preface this. We're not saying that I'm trying to lower the experience of what is a period, right? And pain that person's going through. No, I understand. It is still painful, right? It's just the shedding of a lining, right? It's nothing easy about that. Just understand that pain level, that being that high is not the normal, right? And if it is that and it's really affecting you, please bring it up to your family physician, speak to your gynecologist about it, because there may be something underlying that you are not
causing it,
and that could be causing it, and you can actually get to it to make it easier for yourself, maybe in lower down, or actually getting ahead of something that might be developing or have been developed, and you could actually give it a chance to bring it back to dealing with it before it gets even worse. Right? So then we're looking at also the toll on work and daily functioning. We have like missed work days, cancel meetings. That's why, what was it? Is it Italy? I think so. There was some country in Europe that were given like those days off for the women in their one company that do go through the menstrual cycles. They get a couple days off for the thing.
I heard about that.
Big up to them, because it's still needed. Though I just said that the normalized pain is not nothing, that doesn't mean that those who actually might be sitting on those 3 days don't still need a little time off to just think. So like, I think that's something also should be thinking. Like, I think it's a big robbery that women have to pay for tampons, but either ways, because it really can't stop it. You really can't do it. It's just, women pay for tampons is not it should be a thing. Should be somebody giving, because you really can't stop them.
Personally, as a rule of practice, I carry multiples of different types of like menstrual products, so pads, tampons. Like I carry them not just for me, but just to be able to provide that for a girl. And it's come in clutch for me so many different times. I
Shouldn't be
can't
so
tell
expensive.
you.
It shouldn't be so expensive because you guys can't you can't not
Not
do it.
have a period,
You
yeah.
don't have to, unless it's a huge hormone imbalance, right? It's not
So
something
we
you
don't
can't.
get to opt out of it.
Exactly. It's like there's like I wouldn't say it's very similar to being tall and going on a airport and a
And
flight.
wanting a first class seat
I want
because
to
you need the leg room.
actually fit behind for some type of leg room. If not, you gotta suffer through the whole thing, right? Like, but you gotta pay for being tall, right? So you gotta pay for being a woman, which is or having a uterus, which is unfortunate. So they tell me you having a uterus is a choice. Another conversation for another day, but it shouldn't be that. So like having to miss work days, cancel meetings, and using vacation or sick time specifically to manage symptoms, often without ever disclosing the real reason to the employer, this is not fair.
Yeah,
Right?
because
That
you shouldn't have to
you.
disclose that. It shouldn't be a point of contention or point of issue. But I can say personally for myself, there have been days where the symptoms of my period were so severe that I was not able to go to work. And in certain situations, I was reprimanded for it and I was questioned about why I wasn't there and all of these things. But I shouldn't have to feel pressured to disclose personal medical information to you in order to get some grace for not being able to be at work on that particular day.
Exactly. And then they have the toll on intimacy and relationships, right? So like the pain during sexual intercourse, self-consciousness about both bloating and exhaustion from anemia can quietly strain romantic relationships in ways that really get discussed openly because now you have to hope that your partner understands.
Mm-hmm.
And not every man is going to understand. I'm lucky. I grew up with my mom, my sister. So like my sister made sure that even before I went into to medical school to learn about these things, like she was like, "Oh, you gonna learn about this. You can hear about this. You can think." So she drilled all this information. So a lot of these things that I'm referring to, I learned.
So Kim is the reason why you're a good doctor. Shout out to Kim.
Kim is the reason why I
Shout out
know.
to Kim.
So big up. I told you she's my best friend, right? But those things you have to hope that your partner have that education. If not, you're always thinking, okay, when I go into a relationship now, like I gotta hope maybe I don't worry to pursue it because he may not have that maturity or understanding or grace. So those are things that doesn't help as well for women in those situations. So it's hard on them. So now we just adding about the things that we're adding on to the things that really add on to your cortisol levels and your psychological load. And
it's all connected, right? It's all connected. We're just talking about the layers a little bit more in depth.
Exactly. So we keep adding on. So another thing, we got the dismissal in clinical settings, right? So being told by a provider who may not even have the opportunity to actually learn firsthand and just reading the book and don't have an equitable lens, that heavy bleeding is just how your period is. But remember what I just told you, right? That the pain doesn't warrant further imaging, but he doesn't understand. He or she doesn't understand because they haven't had that training to know that equitably that it affects in Black women a little bit more than it does their other counterparts in other racial groups. So, are having concerns minimized during the appointment, right? An experience so common among Black women, specifically that it has become a recurring theme in patient advocacy research. How many times do you hear it, right? I remember a story of this one lady. She was a fellow on a resident under her attending. And this lady, she dressed up really, really nice to come to this hotel. She wore a small heel and she came saying, "Oh, I'm having a lot of back pain." And the doctor was like, "Oh yeah, she's lame. She just want medication because if you got back pain, where you gonna wear heels?" But the woman only realized a couple years later that this lady dressed up in her Sunday's best to come to the doctor, hoping that she would not be
dismissed.
Hoping that she would have the opportunity to have a conversation where someone would take her seriously because she came dressed as a functional person in society. But yet within that, there was still racism and bias that existed in that aspect. And these are things that happen to Black women a lot.
Yeah.
So that dismissal in clinical settings, a lot of people just avoid not going in the first place because they don't think they're going to be heard. And that's the unfortunate aspect. And then lastly, we're just going to talk about the diagnostic delay. So by the time many people receive an accurate diagnosis, a real treatment conversation, they have often been managing after a real treatment conversation. They have often been managing a severe disruptive symptom for years.
Mhm.
Sometimes having seen multiple providers before being even taken seriously.
Mhm.
And then you finally get the ability, but like sometimes it's a little bit too late
Yeah.
when it comes to that. And that's the unfortunate aspect of it. And it's not fair that that's the system that we live in. That's why it's very important, if you can, find yourself a black doctor, someone who looks like you, someone who understands and have practice. You can see some type of representation in the office that you're walking into. It is very important, right? Representation matters. It will always matter. It will continue to matter,
Mhm.
right? So for those young ones out there who think that it can't be a doctor, you can, very much so, right? Dedicate. Must understand, parents, that it does not take the individual to be a doctor. It takes the village around that individual that
To
helps them,
lift them up and give them that support.
because it takes days where you something cut off, you can't do anything, you can't cook for yourself, you can't maybe hold up your end what's in the house because they have to study. But understand, it takes a village. All right. So we see it now that more individuals are going into the system, are trying to become doctors to try to make a change. Families that are supporting those individuals, please remember that they need you more than just a monetary support, right? It's a little bit more babysitting, as you may call it. You may gotta help them do some laundry. You may gotta make sure the food cut on the side. But once you've done the groundwork of making sure that they're grateful individuals, they're kind individuals, and they're doing it for the correct reason,
Mhm.
when they reach where the pinnacle are, everyone wins, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, I'm not gonna ever forget all those who sacrificed for me to get where I am today. I can never forget, right? So it's very important to make sure that we have that village around those persons also studying medicine. But now, when we talk about studying medicine and getting those individuals into that, we can look at the equity angle of it, right?
Mhm.
So this is just to give you an idea of why it's important to have that equity.
Mhm.
Earlier onset and greater severity, Black women tend to develop fibroids at a younger age. They develop a greater number of fibroids and experience larger fibroids with more severe symptoms
Mhm.
compared to their white counterparts and other racial groups. Looking at disparities in treatment recommendations. So Black women are significantly more likely to be offered or steered toward a hysterectomy as a first line solution compared to less invasive options like a myomectomy, which is surgical removal of fibroids while preserving the uterus, a uterine fibroid embolization, or medication management, even when those alternatives may be clinically appropriate.
Isn't that scary? To think that if you're brave enough as a Black woman to walk into a doctor's office and you're prepared to advocate for yourself, you've done your homework, you know the things that you need to know, and you're able to make your case, and then they turn around and say, okay, so let's do a hysterectomy. What?
Especially if you're in childbearing age and you have yet to have kids, right? Where is the preservation of the opportunity of you being able to still have your family through childbirth,
Mhm.
right? That's why it's very important, as I said, to go where your representation is understood,
Yeah.
right? Go where you're seen and your importance is given equally to anyone else that going, and not just equally, go where your service is considered to be equitable,
Mhm.
right? When we start to take those things into consideration as we go day by day, bit by bit, movement by movement,
Mhm.
then we don't hear, okay, well, we just take out the whole uterus. Why are you telling the 26-year-old woman
Right?
have aspirations of being
a mom one day and having her own family,
exactly that she has to take over. That is disgusting. It should never happen, right?
especially when everything would say that a hysterectomy is the last line, because if we cannot treat, then yes, okay, then we need to consider having to remove it. But to take them straight to the end of the line, first and foremost, when all of these other options exist
Mhm.
and they don't need it.
Exactly. So very important that if someone comes and tell you, hey, but we got to take a hysterectomy, you say, oh, wait a second. So why can't I get a myomectomy? Why can't I
Yeah. What's your rationale for not providing me with medication to manage? What's your rationale for not having me do the uterine fibroid embolization process?
Mhm.
What
Exactly.
is, yeah, why are we going straight to a complete removal?
Of
Complete
it,
removal. Why?
right? Yeah, exactly. So these are questions you have to take into consideration. Don't let no one butcher you just because it looks good on their resumes and know that they've done 7 hysterectomies, right? And it's something as simple as that. It's like, oh, you know what? This is great. I need to get an amputation done, so and I just take the foot. He'll survive. He's 70 years old. He could put a like no, or let's take it. And then she's okay. She could adopt. That's not how it works,
Mm-mm,
right?
mm-mm.
So we're looking at also a documented pattern, not an isolated experience. So broader research on pain assessment in clinical settings has repeatedly found that Black patients reported pain is more likely to be underestimated or undertreated than of their counterparts. Fibroid care is one clear, concrete example of that larger pattern playing out in a specific condition.
Mhm.
All right. So also, don't let anyone minimize your pain. Whatever you do, your pain is not to be minimized at all.
Yeah.
All right.
If it's real to you, it's real pain. Therefore, it's meant to be treated seriously.
Exactly. And then so we have also systemic framing and not individual blame. So the point of naming this isn't to villainize individual providers, many of whom are doing their best within an imperfect system. So though I'm saying that these providers may not know, it's not necessarily that they don't want to know. It's really and truly the case of that they were never taught.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to understand that a lot of providers, especially in North America, will never have the opportunity to treat or see a condition expressed in Black skin or from Black people while doing their
Until
temp
they're practicing.
until they're practicing, and then it's a whole new ballpark for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to remember not to just villainize their the providers itself. And I'm almost said vanillaize, because people may call them vanilla, but don't villainize the individual providers. It's to name a structural pattern so listeners can recognize it. All right, so we need to ask better questions and advocate for ourselves when you get a chance to encounter it. Right, so you gotta make sure that don't just say that person, make sure that you come prepared. I always say that if you're going to do something and you're having all these things, write it down in a book. Write it down, right when it's at the tip of your mind, write it down. I'll bring that book to you and say, hey, I have all these questions. Leave a space under. So as you give me my answer, I'm gonna write it down. I want to document, I want to take it, I want to be able to travel with, understand, and be on the journey of my health condition, just as how you may see it there in your chart. I want to be able to have it for my own specific knowledge. So if anything that's happened to me on the flight and I can't speak for myself, I can tell some person here, look at this. These are the questions that I normally ask, and these are the answers I've been given.
Mm-hmm.
And most doctors will respect.
Every
Right?
doctor should respect that, because it shows that your patient is as invested and is willing to adhere to treatment as much as you are willing to treat them. So to be able to have that opportunity and give them that information is something that physicians shouldn't be passing up, because adherence to treatment is already hard enough for patients as well, right? So when they are willing to take that moment and really get educated and learn about what they're living with to be able to give themselves the best chance of having a full, healthy life, living with whatever condition they may have, that needs to be supported.
Exactly. So, and then we have to look at the consequences, right? So especially when it comes to like the hysterectomy aspect. Hysterectomy is irreversible. You don't get to take it out and put it back in. It's not a carburetor. It's not an engine that you could put and store on the side and put back in. It really is not. And it ends fertility. And there's a lot of disparities in how that option gets presented, right? And it also has recommended long-term consequences for family planning, autonomy, and quality of life that ripple far beyond the initial treatment decision. So please, when we come, I know we touched on it, but when it comes to that hysterectomy, please be very, very cautious on accepting that
Mhm.
and not asking other questions. And you don't have to accept it, right? Just because that doctor decides to tell you, you have the right to go and answer 3 to 4 other different opinions,
Mhm.
right? And I'm not saying just 3 or 4. You could go to 12 if you need to, right? The number is infinite, but you have the right to ask more and not settle for what they're giving you, especially if you don't feel if it's correct for yourself.
1000%.
Mhm. So, as I said, this is a 4-part series for the month of uterine fibroid awareness. We're going to really go through parts of where we start recognizing symptoms and getting an accurate diagnosis. So, like what tests to expect when you're going through checking for fibroids, what questions you should ask your provider, and how to describe symptoms in a way that's taken seriously. So this is not only an opportunity for, and we're going to touch on that in our next episode. It's not only an opportunity that we are just to talk about what fibroids do to you, but we're talking about, okay, we're here now, you may have it. What exactly should I do when I get in front of the doctor? Right. So it's a little bit more a step further to making sure that you get the correct cure that you are deserved in those moments, right? And also what to expect for the would it rather be ultrasound, MRI, hysteroscopy, or whatever the case may be, what your results may seem, what actually is when you get these results, what you should expect to understand that. We also want to look at those treatment options across the spectrum, looking at that medication management, right? You're looking at the minimal procedures, of the uterine fibroid embolization, the MRI guided focus ultrasound, surgical options like the myomectomy, and we want to talk a little bit about the hysterectomy, and how to weigh the trade-offs of each based on individual goals around fertility and long-term health. And then we're going to talk a little bit more on some of the lived experiences, self-advocacy. We're going to talk about endometriosis, right? We're going to talk about that hormonal imbalance as we go on further and further for all the different episodes, and what you can do or the questions that you should be asking your provider to help you better your day-to-day life when it comes to fibroids. Those living with fibroids, those who may think that they have fibroids, those who have the possibility of developing fibroids, and those persons who live with persons with fibroids would be able to share the information with them, and also go with them to the different consultations. They can actually help them as well to describe what they may be feeling. So it's a packed month for July, I could say.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of educating this month. I think this is the first time that we've gone this route, and I think it's going to be really exciting for our listeners. So I hope that everyone is looking forward to these next few weeks.
Yes, I think we have to really be mindful of what it is. Be mindful that the silence is real. Be mindful that giving a voice to it can actually make a change, right? Rather be as little as it is or as many persons that you may touch, to be able to hear what we have to say. And so for those listening, share with a friend, share with a cousin, a family member, somebody, just say, hey, you know about fibroids? Well, listen to this on Sunday at 4:30 if you're not doing anything. If you're sitting down to have your evening, you should just plan to take a nap. I've heard that my voice puts people to sleep sometimes. So if you just want
put a
something,
sound in the background.
right? So you can just hear what we have to say. Because you never know. You may come for one thing and leave with something different. Right? The information is going to be there to help us and to help us continue. So for me, I'm very excited for this series. How about yourself, Rachel?
I'm pretty excited. I've loved being able to share information with people and take medical terminology, medical concepts, all of that information that gets put out, helping it be repackaged and being able to share with everybody in a way that's simple and easy for everyone to understand, because knowledge truly is power. And so to be able to share it, I feel very, very privileged.
Thank you. And I hope that as we go on and we get more questions coming in and whatnot, also too, we can answer all of the doubts that you guys may have out there that you may not know what to ask. It's a free space, it's a safe space. There are no stupid questions over here. The only stupid questions are the questions that are not asked. So please take the opportunity to ask your questions while we have the opportunity, while we are here on online with you for our program. So I think that brings us to another end of another episode of Black Up Unfiltered on Love Bay Radio, where truth, knowledge, and community come together. Go ahead.
Stop stealing my line. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in these unfiltered conversations that challenge, uplift, and empower. Remember, your health is your power, your story is your strength, and your voice matters in every single space that you enter.
So stay connected, stay informed, and stay committed to your wellness journey. Until next time, keep reclaiming your narrative and protecting your peace. My name is Dr. Hakeem Stewart, here with the wonderful
Rachel Sinclair.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next week.